Hello world, this is JWP, the J Ward Primo Beats, coming to you live from my bedroom. Check me out on YouTube at JWPTube, at Twitch, JWP Stream, Facebook, JWP Meta, my Patreon at JWP Patreon, and I recently started a Discord, JWP Server. Today I'm going to be continuing along with the SynthEdit documentation help tutorial. This is part 4. So I'm going to go ahead and open SynthEdit. And I'm going to jump into that. Go help, SynthEdit help. And open up SynthEdit help, tutorials and reference, SynthEdit tutorials. Double click the banner to get it go full screen-ish. Tutorial 4. Low frequency oscillator, LFO. Increase the size. 5, 6, 7, 5. In this tutorial, we will improve more on our basic synthesizer, providing extra depth to the sound with a low frequency oscillator, LFO. This tutorial assumes that you have completed the first 3 tutorials. This tutorial will teach you what an LFO is, how to use it and to control your sound, how to connect or route the LFO to various destinations, how to control the LFO strength from your MIDI keyboard's mod wheel. Move through this tutorial by clicking the next and back buttons at the top of this window or by using the table of contents on the left to go through a specific topic or tutorial. Just want to check my microphone here. Mic check? Yeah, okay. Alright, so we're going to use the arrows. Wait, was that it? Yeah. For this tutorial, we will need a basic synthesizer similar to the one we built in the first and second tutorial as a starting point. We have one already for you. So I'm going to click that and it'll give me a file to save. I'm going to throw that right on my desktop. And then open folder, because I'm pretty sure my SynthEdit is actually set to open in 32-bit, which is annoying. I'm not sure how to fix that. I've given it a couple knocks. I believe the only way to fix it would be to uninstall and reinstall SynthEdit 64-bit. Do it in the order where 64-bit ends last, because my 32-bit was the last one I installed. So I believe the SC1 files will open with the last installed system. I digress. Back to the topic at hand. If we look, it looks pretty much like the synthesizer from the last tutorial. A little bit different here and there. I might actually be able to just go grab that. Thinking about it. Yeah, because it looks like this isn't in such great shape. So I'm going to throw up a quick BRB and go grab that file. Alright, I still had it on my computer, so I didn't have to dig too deep. Panel edit, and we have what we used to have. I'm actually going to switch back to the default skin, just so everything lines up better. Alright, but I do have to compare with the new one here, because it looked like we have a couple extra controls in the new one. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Yeah, it looks like we have 2 envelopes. Alrighty, so I'm going to, what is that, amount to filter. And we also have an SV filter. What's in here? SV filter. Okay. So I'm going to, it's all old school. Get to the newer view. Space things out a bit. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. Bear with me. And put this guy up and over, around. Don't like the way that's webbing out final. And why do I have... Okay. Alright. Looks a little bit cleaner. I'm going to jump into this one, and I guess we're just making another envelope with an amount, which goes to overall level, yeah. And resonance and cutoff are still there. So I'm just going to grab all of this. And I'm actually going to space some stuff out a bit, make some room for that new envelope. A little bit of tearing there. Just gonna paste it and squeeze it in. Press up. Okay, and I want one more. This is an amount slider. And I'm actually gonna name it amount instead of AMT. And this is going to, looks like pitch. And some of the preset is 2.4. I'm gonna copy those over. Let's start with 2.4. So we can get this in the pitch first. And 0.48, 4.55, 265, and cutoff is 3529, 3.3, no, just 0. 0.3529 and 0.50, 0.050, I don't know, 0.5701. Okay. It looks like it's trimming them, that's just fine. Let's look at the panel here. Now we've got a mess. Let's make some room. Actually, we'll follow the tutorial. Now we're at this point. We can continue to follow along here if I can find the right window. Okay. Simply click on the icon and save the project file to your disk, then open it up in SynthEdit. So far, we have experimented by changing parameters by hand and via an envelope generator. Now we explore a new method, the low frequency oscillator, or LFO. The LFO is a common way to modulate a sound's parameters. Musicians add interest to a note with vibrato, wavering pitch, or tremolo, wavering volume. Many guitar effects are based on a slow repeating sweeping of some parameter, chorus, phasing, flanging. The LFO provides the control signal to achieve this. Let's add an LFO to our basic synthesizer. On to the next one. Adding an LFO. An LFO is just a normal oscillator except that its frequency can be set very low, usually far too low to be audible. Add a standard oscillator module. Insert waveform oscillator. Open the new oscillator's property page by right-clicking on the module and selecting properties. Rename the module, set its title property to LFO, close the properties window. Your synth LFO should now look like the image on the left. All right. So I'm actually going to close this other one since we're done here. And no. Okay, we're back here. No, I don't want to be there. I want to be here. And I'm going to go into waveform oscillator. I'm going to drag that on. This is the properties panel here. Value name LFO, and that changes to LFO. So apparently that's all it tells you to do. However, in this situation, I am going to stress using the oscillator algorithm, the oscillator algorithm. So I'm going to get rid of these. I'm just going to chop this stuff out here. And I'm going to turn this into a mono signal. Let's see, output. So I just brought in a minimal and I trimmed everything else around it, and then I went into the container and pulled the plug on the right channel. So it's a little just left or a monaural signal here. So output 0, output 1 now. All right. So in order to trigger this, I need to go into MIDI and trigger to MIDI. And this will now be all the parameters needed from here, which should be reasonable. If we need anything else, I can go in there and wire it out. It's just important that we keep the oscillator algorithm so the oscillator sleeps. Otherwise, it'll always be awake and pulling about 1% out of the system. Oh, 0.1%. But it adds up, especially when there is polyphonic stuff happening. In this case, it actually doesn't exist as a polyphonic signal, which is a little disappointing. I'll have to figure something out, because the VCA does make it a monophonic signal. Maybe that's why it stands alone. However, that's not very efficient. Moving on, LFO rate and shape. Most LFOs have three common controls: rate, which is pitch, waveform, or wave shape, and depth, which is amplitude. Let's add controls for waveform and rate. Insert a slider and connect it to the LFO pitch. Open the new slider's property and set its title to rate. Open it automation page and set low value -10, high value 0. This lowers the frequency range of the oscillator into the subaudible range. Now insert a list entry control, insert controls list entry, connect its choice output to the LFO's waveform plug, change its title to shape. You can now make the list entry box a little wider by dragging its lower right corner. Alright, so we want to program in a slider with -10 to 0 and a list entry into waveform. In our situation, we actually have a container though. So I'm going to go inside to the container. I'm going to break the outgoing patch just so that the pins stay in line. And I want, what was it, pitch? Pitch is on the outside, so we don't have to worry about that. But I do want to bring out waveform. And then I'm going to reconnect the output just so it puts the pin back. Now we have our waveform pin on top instead of underneath. And our output pin on the bottom right. And our pitch is up here, so I'm just going to drag this up a bit to get a right angle happening there if I can. Kind of hide that patch. And we're going to go to controls and bring in a slider. No, that's not a slider. A slider. We tried to drop one in the corner. It's good. The slider goes to pitch. And we want low value of -10 and a high value of 0. And I made a mistake there. I want that -10 low value. All right, and when we move the slider, we now move down to -10. And we also want a list entry for the waveform. I'm just going to connect that. Get things a little tidier. And we now have, I'm going to name this actually container LFO. We now have the start of this, pretty much equivalent to that. So next page, controlling the LFO level. To use an LFO effectively, we need control over its level or depth. Insert a level adjust module, insert modifiers level ADJ. Connect the patch cord from the audio plug of the LFO to the input 1 plug of the level ADJ module. Connect the output of the level ADJ to the pitch plug of the VCO1, the synth oscillator. Insert a slider module and connect its signal out to the level adjuster's input 2. Rename the slider LFO depth. This slider controls how much the LFO will affect the pitch of the synth's VCO. VCO is voltage controlled oscillator, so that would be controls the pitch, its pitch. We now have an LFO that can affect the pitch of your synth. Play your synth experiment with the LFO rate, shape, and depth. You can achieve anything from subtle vibrato to weird sci-fi sounds. All right, so that was quite a bit to be installing here. If we look though, we kind of have a bit of a sneak peek of what we're going to end up with, or exactly what it wants. Insert a level module. Insert, okay. So I'm not going to reread all that. I'm just going to copy what this looks like here. And to get to that, we need a level ADJ, which is from modifiers. And I'm going to grab the level ADJ, toss it in front of the outputs, and output to input 1, I believe. And then we need another slider. And this slider, I'm going to actually name this first slider here, which is rate, right? Rate, yeah. So I'm just going to click that first slider, and we're going to rename this rate, R-A-T-E. And then our second slider is, I'm going to connect that to the input 2 of level ADJ, and we're going to call that depth. Right, so depth, LFO depth. All right, so it looks like it's set to 8 already. I'll just push it up to 10. And then that goes into the oscillator pitch, which is up here somewhere, which is just lankily hanging out, which is not very good. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this LFO, and we're going to replace this greedy oscillator with a oscillator algorithm. Again, this is only monophonic. Not sure how to get everything polyphonic. Right now, I guess it's going to be paraphonic. Yeah, let's go with for efficiency here, and then we'll worry about how to get the LFO in some other time, because this is a bit more important. So we're going to bring in the waveform, and we're going to set the output to the filter, and of course we want a trigger to MIDI. So we're going to put that in the back here and link that up to MIDI in, and we want pitch from the keyboard there, and gate to gate. Velocity, I guess, why not? Our channel will be channel all, just for now. And then we want the level 80J from the LFO into the pitch. I'm just looking at it, and like this is quite a stretch. It's quite a messy setup, which is fine for now, I suppose. Let's see what the tutorial says to do now. It says we have to try it out. So I'm going to turn it on. There will be no direct line through to the stream, so it'll just be my speakers. I'm going to have to turn them up. Of course, it's going to be loud for me. And then actually I'm going to do about 50% before I go 100. Let's see where that sits. And we got a bunch of loose controls here. So let's start with a sine, and this is for pitch, so the pitch is going to be waving. We have depth and rate. Okay, so depth is 10, so that'll be, I think, like 10 octaves. Start with sine, and rate will be quite fast, so it's going to sound like some crazy space sound, I think. Or not. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not doing anything. I did set this to pitch, right? Yeah. Okay. Maybe because it's not being triggered? Yeah, because it's sleeping. It's not actually doing anything right now because there's nothing affecting the gate. If I wanted it to run freely, I'd leave it like this with the gate open. So it's just going to keep running. And we can see that if I right-click the LFO here, the container it's in, and then I go debug, we can see that it's running. And if I turn off the gate, go back to the trigger and put this as 0. So I do believe it's at like 0.1% or 0.01. We'll go debug, and it's at like 0.003 now, so it's sleeping. But let's wake it up and let it free run. So it's going to constantly be running. And we're going to check out the sound. I'm not sure, maybe it's just too fast, I can't hear it. So let's fiddle with this, we'll bring this down a bit. No. Can't hear it at all. Yeah, it's not changing at all. So I did something wrong. Let's try a different waveform. Let's try the saw. No. And the ramp, which is the opposite of a saw. I think because it's not free-flowing and it's been, contained within these containers, it's not changing properly. Or maybe because it's not connected. Yeah, it is. It's connected over here. So when it triggers, it's only sending one signal. Okay, guys, so I gotta unwrap these, and we're gonna have to do the dirty way. Otherwise, it's just not responding properly. And so I'm going to uncontainerize. Okay, not sure what it's crying about. So MIDI to CV. So we're gonna get that out of there. Well, here, there, and everywhere. Perhaps too, it could have been the envelope inside. But I would have been able to hear at least something. Interesting. Okay, so let's rewire things here. Pitch to pitch, gates. That's just the, what is that? What's the filter? So the filter is actually doing something too with this envelope, but it's not being triggered. So it's kind of being held in a certain area, or held in a certain pass, which is not good. Signal in. Okay. And then I gotta unwrap this guy. Let's go containerize. Got all this wonderful stuff again. Just delete that. Send out to level 80J, pitch in from rate. This has to be reset because every time we plug something in, it resets itself, which is super annoying. So low, high to 10, okay. And I did that all while running the system, which is incredibly sort of dangerous. And I just saved over my last file. So I'm gonna go back to the desktop and we're gonna go to tutorial 4. Which is fine, it's already in the Patreon, so freely downloadable, along with the video that's posted there. All right, so we're back to where we were. However, our oscillators are now always awake. And I'm gonna plug this level 80J into this oscillator and hopefully we can get some sort of reaction out of it. There we go. So I'm going to set, I guess I can set the output to default out. I think it has been headphones this whole time anyway. It's not supposed to be. Weird. Default. Okay, so that's showing up on stream. I don't know why. Output speaker. Oh, because it's output headphone. Yeah, okay. So it'll double down. Let's do headphone for now. And that should work if I do this. No, we'll go speaker. Just so I can hear it as well. It'll double, but it's fine. And I want the old keyboard. Let's see if this is the old keyboard here. Well, there's no option. I'll just have to audition as I go. So we can see how fast the sine wave is affecting the pitch of the standard oscillator. This is quite a bit slower now. And it's on ramp, so it's starting up and going down. The sine we want. It's wavy now. But it's also quite deep, so we can maybe chop that into 1 octave. Let's go 1 here, and it shouldn't be too wavy now. We can also speed that up. Let's go, this is no determined rate, so this is just volts to pitch sort of thing. And then with our regular volume envelope, if we add some attack, or if we add some amount to attack, then we can get sort of a pad fade in. A little bit more 8, or like quite a long delay in. All right, so with all that set back, we did some testing. Because we're going to do another shape here. Let's try the triangle, I suppose. So it'll be point to point. It's pretty much the same. Ramp is probably the most interesting as it starts over every time. Kind of sounds a bit like Mega Man dying, I guess. And saw would be the opposite way, so up. Sort of a bit of a recharge sound. And of course noise won't do anything, it'll just sound a bit like a bug. Pink noise, a little bit different. Quite angry bug. And we'll turn that back to sine. Pulse is a bit different. It's not part of the tutorial, so I'm not going to look at it. I guess I could just throw it in right quick. So it's on, off. Alright. And I do believe this is called shape, which I forgot to name. Is that what it's called? Shape? Shape, yeah. All right, so continuing along in the tutorial here. Routing the LFO. The LFO is currently modulating the oscillator pitch. However, it is just as useful for modulating the filter or amplifier, Let's provide routing so that we can connect the LFO to various parts of our synth without having to add or delete patch cords. Delete the patch cord between the LFO ADJ and the oscillator pitch. Insert a switch module, insert flow control, switch 1 to many. Connect the patch cord from the level ADJ output plug to the switch input plug. Connect the switch spare output to the filter pitch plug. A new spare plug will appear. Connect the switch's new spare output plug to the oscillator pitch. Add a list entry and connect it to switch choice plug as shown. You can use the new list entry to route the LFO to either destination. Compare the difference. The only problem is both list choices are the same, pitch, which is a bit confusing, so let's relabel the choices so something more useful. Open the switch properties screen, right-click properties, look for the two plug names labeled pitch. Change the first one to filter pitch and the second one to OSC pitch. Close the properties screen. Note that the list entry updates to show the new names. Our routing options are now much clearer. Play your synth and experiment with the routing. So I'm going to do that. And I do believe it wanted this. So I'm going to delete that line to the oscillator pitch input. And I'm going to head to flow control. And we go 1 to many. Drop that right in front here. What does it look like on here? Because mine's real messy. So it shows the oscillator underneath. Meaning, if I control A, I'll drag this down. I'm going to move this like so in this corner. And it kind of shows that the LFO sits up here. Somewhere. Let's tighten that things up a bit. And then we bring our switch in and we connect the input to, this is 1 to many, to the level ADJ. And then our first output to where? Our first output is filter pitch and the second one is oscillator pitch. So I'm going to connect to the SV filter pitch and the oscillator pitch. And then I'm going to rename this oscillator LFO because I had to unwrap the original container. All right, now we want a list entry. It's going to copy the shape one here, copy, and paste. I'm going to move this rotary guy out of the way. We're going to put that on top here and connect it to the switch. And now we have these two options. However, they, like it said in the tutorial, they are both enabled the same. And in order to change them, we click the switch here. And on the properties area, the first one we're going to call filter pitch. And then shift tab, down, tab. And this one is OSC pitch. All right, so now we have, when we look at the list, we now have two options. And then we have been directed to fiddle with it again. So again, I did that with the system on. I should have turned the system off, otherwise I might have encountered a crash. I'm gonna save, and we're going to do some filter pitch. And we're going to do some resonance. We're going to bring that way up and we're going to hear that part resonating more. And if we use, say, what's already a sine, let's try the ramp. But we want a little more resonance. Let's just crank this resonance. Probably a bad idea, but we'll bring it down 9.8. Is that coming through on stream? Yeah. And of course, I believe this is just a low pass. So we can also increase, we'll spectre the resonance, turn this back up to about 9.5, just so we can hear it, what the filter is doing, where it's moving, and we're going to change the rate here. Let's go about -1. I'm just going to type it in. And this should be quite a bit faster. And we're going to change to let's try the pulse. And we're going to increase the depth here. Let's go to about 2.5. want to go too much because it's going to jump up high, right? And if we use the sine, almost got the meow synth happening. And of course, if we decrease the cutoff, we're going to get a little lower. The more cutoff, we're going to get higher. And we'll just set that back to about 1. And we'll set resonance. We'll just leave it there. And we're going to switch to oscillator pitch. And check out the ramp. It's too fast. Let's go like -2 again. Oops. And as it stands, we cannot do both at the same time. Need a bit more of an advanced modulation matrix to do that. I'm going to turn it off this time. I'm going to head back to the tutorial here. So I do believe we've caught up to everything. All right. LFO to volume. So you see the picture here. We have now a third option. Routing the LFO to the synth's volume is more complicated. Currently, the synth is controlled by an ADSR module envelope. We don't want to override that signal. That would prevent the ADSR from functioning correctly. We are going to modulate the VCA indirectly by routing the LFO to the ADSR's level control. The ADSR overall level pin is not currently connected to anything. If you open its properties screen, right-click properties, you can see that the overall level is set to 10. To correctly modulate the volume, the LFO should add to the current level. Insert a new fixed values module, insert controls fixed value. This module is for values you only need to set once. Connect the patch cord from the fixed values spare plug to the lower ADSR's overall level plug. Connect the switch spare output to the same ADSR overall level plug. Connecting 2 patch cords to the same destination adds the signal together. To clarify the purpose of the fixed value module, open its property screen, change the plug label to 10, close the property screen. Open the switch property screen, its last plug should be labeled overall level. Change it to VCA, close the property screen. Experiment with routing the LFO to the VCA. Experiment with different LFO shapes. Modulating the synth volume is called tremolo. Alright, so it wants us to do that now. It did say that the ADSR is currently set to 10. What is set to 10? Usually it's set to 8 though, I think. However, it's set to 10. So what we want to do from here is we want to bring in a controls, fixed values volts. And we're going to place it here. I'm actually going to move these things around. They look out of place down there. And we're going to bring fixed values and connect that to overall level. And now we see overall level has been labeled, so it copied its label into this module here. And if we click it, we can see the properties. The first property is overall level, and the second property is value, which is already set to 10. I do believe it copied both the label and the value. So we're going to just change the overall level name to 10, just so when it displays the value going in, instead of an arbitrary name. And then we're going to grab the switch here, and we're going to connect that to the same plug overall level. So now we have a new entry on our switch. We have filter pitch, oscillator pitch, and overall level. And we're going to change the name of overall level by clicking the switch, and it'll load the properties. Then we go to overall level, and we call this VCA. Hit enter. Make sure to push enter, otherwise it won't update the name. If we throw a container in, we can see that it has updated the name. Just delete that container again. Now, the reason we have this 10 plugged in here is because the value that's coming out of the LFO will also go to 0, or it'll go to like -5, I do believe, depending on the depth. So we want a starting point at always 0, and then the LFO will subtract from that 10. Otherwise, it would be always quiet, right? So let's go ahead and check that out. Now we're going to turn the system on, and we want our routing to go to VCA, and we have a medium speed at a relatively deep depth, but not quite deep enough, so let's go about 10 full blast. And we can hear that, what was it, tremolo? And then if we turn up the rate here to the -1, we get a much faster tremolo. We can still hear that resonance. Let's turn that down just a bit. So yeah. You can check out filter pitch again, which is always interesting because of that resonance. The VCA, so with a full power of 10, it's turning it all the way down and then all the way back up with a shape of sine. If we go to ramp, it's just going to continuously turn it up, I believe. And then saw, it's going to continuously turn it down. However, if we go about 5 depth, it's only going to turn it down halfway. Because like I said, what's coming out of the LFO at its top part is, it would be 10, -10. And then on its bottom part would be 0. We can see this by using a scope or just a volt entry. We can look and see what's coming out of the LFO. So right now the LFO is running at these values. So it's going -5 to +5, I believe. And if we turn it all the way up, I'm not even sure. It's just too fast here. Let's see if we can change this value to get it to display in that scope, which would probably be about 2.5. So yeah, we can see it's +5 and -5. Switch to oscillator. Of course, this is super fast now. That's just to display it in the window there. I think 3 might be, and yeah, 3 is the magic number to get it to fit in there. And then if we decrease the depth here, we're getting +2.5 to -2.5. So we're actually going beyond the top volume of the VCA when we're connected to the VCA, because it's adding to it, right? So it's going 12.5 to 7.5. And then as well, 10, it's going 15 to half. That's too fast. So it's not fully turning it down. If we go like 20, perhaps we'll get it to fully turn down. Yeah. However, that's not a range that's part of it. So we've experimented a bit with the amount going to the VCA here. Followed all the instructions, moving on to the next part. Summary. Great work. Now that you know how to create an LFO and add routing to signals, try adding an envelope generator to your LFO so that the amount of modulation can change over time. Or try creating an envelope generator that you can route to different parts of your synth. Alright, so that still doesn't solve that these are never sleeping. As we can see, this number is constantly changing while the system's on. So that just means it's always awake. I imagine all of this might have to be wrapped a certain way. It'd take a bit of experimentation with the basic oscillator algorithm. I do believe the LFO would have to sit in the same container as it, perhaps be controlled by the same MIDI to VCA. But that is a more intermediate expert or competent expert type documentation. I'm not a big synth user, so I'm mostly on effects now. I used to be. I do know my way around a little bit. But it did say I should try to get the second envelope in, and I've been kind of itching to clean up the front end here. I'm just going to look at how long I've been running for. 45 minutes. Alright, so let's give it some air to breathe a bit. I guess we'll just center these ones. And we're just guesstimating right now. The amount here is going to be different. LFO stuff. These diagnosis tools can go. I'm just going to click those and delete those. And I want 2 more structure groups or panel groups, structure group, panel group. And one of them I'm going to name LFO, and that's up here, text, call LFO. And then this second one we will call LFO envelope. And then we're just going to make a secondary envelope dedicated to the LFO. However, let's get some of this stuff cleaned up here. My biggest word is white noise, which barely fits, so that has to come out a bit. The biggest word for shape is filter pitch, which can be a bit smaller, but let's actually match that up with this guy here. Shape, and this is, what is this called? What is the rotor called? Switch? Switch, it doesn't have a name really. Yeah, it doesn't look like it gets a name. We'll just call it route. R-U-T-E. And then we're going to move the rate over, depth over. See if we can squeeze that in somewhere, perhaps on top. Move these guys back again. And I selected too much. And grab this. That's not what I want. I want this. Just going to match it up with this one. And we'll put over. Give it a bit of breathing room. And we're going to see if this stuff will fit in there. Not even completely. So, it has to be a bit wider. We'll leave the VCA envelope over here. And we'll just leave things kind of hanging out for now. And we will get these two controls up over here. And then we'll see how much space this is going to take up. I'm going to put a mount at the end. Drop these guys here. Looks like I might have to come over a bit more. Let's see where the LFO envelope sits. A bit of space. Drag it over. Leave that a bit of breathing room. So this guy can come over some more. A bit of breathing room. And yeah, looks like I can come down one actually. So this isn't as long as that one, which is fine. Still in a good spot. Let's expand the preset selector and expand the keyboard. All right. Looks like we kind of got this like a white space here that's kind of distracting. So let's pull the envelope over. Give it one spin. I'll leave it there. That's fine. Got a bit of white space here, but it's less distracting, in my opinion. I guess I could space things out, but there's no real point to getting too picky. All right. So that's done. Let's get it wired. So if we want our ADSR to control, our secondary ADSR to control specifically the LFO, I'm just going to make a bit of room here. We, I imagine, need a VCA, which again is going to make it monophonic. And what I mean by like monophonic stuff is that, oh, it's free running. Will it clone itself if it's free running? Pretty sure it'll still clone itself. What I mean is that every time you hit a key or you make a chord, each one of those notes, I really wish I could use my keyboard, but I can't anymore because that's not a thing. But like multiple notes will hold the different areas in the pitch. The internal system will clone the filter multiple times for each note, and the filter will be moving in different positions depending on where the note was played. I imagine that have to be synced though. So right now, monophonic is fine because it's not synced. It'll always be the same filter no matter what position it's in. All right, a little technical, but it won't sound different, in other words, right now, because there's no sync. The LFO isn't synced to anything. It's not, it's just constantly running. So I want to put a VCA in front of it, just so that I can give it an envelope. Let's move this stuff out of the way here. Let's go down, and then we'll put it before the switch, just because it's less stuff to route out. I mean, I could put a VCA for each one, but there's no real point. Now we have a VCA to the input here, And the volume we want to connect, that starts at 8. So we're going to change that to 10. And I want to go linear response. That's just a little more, I'll just keep it exponential. It just makes it more humanistic, human hearing. Linear is very digital sounding. It's an exact copy, whereas exponential gives it more of a organic listening experience. So we have our ADSR wired in to control the LFO. However, we have no gate, so let's connect up our trigger and gates. And now we can control the amount of filter that happens. So I'm going to save and turn on the system, and we'll check that out. So let's go back to filter pitch again, and we're going to, the resonance is high. So let's turn up that resonance some more so we can really hear where that filters. It's quite high. Let's bring it down a bit with the depth. We'll go 2.5. Too fast or too slow? Let's go -1. Speed it up a bit. Let's turn the attack all the way down. Let's turn it all the way up. Let's give the synth a bit of a release, so it's going to kind of fade out gradually. Let's bring the attack in again. And let's set the release nice and high. Let's just turn the sustain all the way up, so it's going to give it the full depth. Turn -2 a bit slower. It's really hard to tell. Let's look at the oscillator pitch. Still really hard to tell. Let's turn up the amount all the way. Is that what's coming through on stream? That must be a horrible listening experience. I can't tell. So many windows. Okay. Oh yeah, sounds like someone like deflating a balloon. So I'm not sure why it's doing that. Sustain is full. Release maybe. Try to release to 0. It just sounds like it's going crazy. Because the depth, the amount total depth that's going to make it to the pitch is only based on the depth here or here to there. So it's scaling this 2.5 by 10. So let's maybe bring this down to 1. It just sounds like it's going crazy or something. It's not even that fast. Oh, because it's white noise, man. And we can hear that the envelope stops after we let go, and then the release plays the notes. Let's go with, since we have the shape set properly now, let's check out the filter pitch again, the filter again. And let's do the release thing here. Let's go 5 release and we'll go 8 with the filter. So the filter will always kind of be affecting it. Whenever we got nothing, let's crank the depth. Filter pitch. Why am I not getting anything now? Maybe no decay. It's too high. Filter pitch. That's cutoff, right? So maybe you gotta bring the cutoff up a bit. It should say cutoff. Strange. Well, it's affecting other things. Let's check the VCA. So we got kind of that volume fade. Let's give it a full depth. And then we can kind of fade that in so the vibrato or the tremolo doesn't come in until a bit later. It sounds super fast. Is my rate too fast? Is that what it is? Let's try 5. Isn't that supposed to be volume though? What's going on? Okay, so that's going to volume, yeah. So why does it sound like pitch? Where is this going? Okay, this may be why, because the envelope is still connected to the filter. So this whole time it's been controlling, it's been doubling down with the filter. So now that the filter's clear, we should be able to hear it. Except it's full blast now, so let's just try 2.5. It's fading in. Let's bring up the cutoff a bit. So this is the point where it starts. So it starts there and then it goes up 2.5 octaves totally. And it's quite slow, so let's speed it up, negative 2.5. So it's starting there and then it's climbing 2 octaves. Oh, 2.5. Let's just make it 2 octaves. Right, and then if we take the amount and we cut that in half, we're only going to get 1 octave. It's sort of how the routing works. And we can change the pitch to hear that. And of course the resonance is still kind of going. And let's give that a different starting point here. Let's go with white noise. So we can kind of hear it happening with the white noise. Maybe with the cutoff low. For depth, that would be the oscillator pitch. Of course, that's not going to change anything. Let's go back to filter pitch. It sounds like extra windy or something. Let's try pulse. We can hear that resonance pulling on it. Alright, so that's pretty much an exploration of an LFO. I did a little bit of extra stuff, which was, I'm just going to save, routing the LFO through an ADSR, which requires the VCA. And there's a lot going on here as far as needs to be more efficient. This is a really dirty machine, so to speak. How to do that can take a bit of time. I'm not 100% sure how to keep things sleeping and at the same time still operating properly. Polyphonic, monophonic, so let's see. It actually is sleeping already, which is good. It's because the VCA is in front of it, I think. Well, let's see compared to the actual oscillator. Yeah, that other oscillator is just sleeping. Everything's really efficient. Maybe it's because of like the new system upgrades and stuff. We have way more efficient oscillators. So I've been pushing the oscillator algorithm too hard, perhaps. But that doesn't fix anything as far as polyphonic here. And the LFO being cloned internally, the filters being cloned internally, which is a story for another time. So I'm going to throw this into the Patreon. This is the file here. I'm going to save. I'm going to take a short break and I will be back. But if you're watching this on YouTube, then thanks for watching and until next time.